Mike, all set? Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bristol Town Council meeting of October 30th. If you could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to start off a bit off script this evening. The administrator and I were at a meeting today at the Rhode Island DOT Director's Office. We have been working on something for months and months and months. You may be familiar with the Silver Creek Bridge. You may have heard that term bandied about a few times. After a lot of hard work and with kudos that belong to the governor's office, obviously to the DOT director and his staff, the treasurer, and the administrator, a lot of work, efforts, and energies went into getting to where we are now, which is the bridge will not be closed. The bridge, and you may have gotten this email already, and it's not as fun this way, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's not going to be closed. There will be one lane open at worst case scenario throughout the project. The project will still be completed when it's supposed to be. It will be completed inside the budget that was proposed, this is all just impressive stuff. There will be 3 phases, and I'm going to just take a moment here and talk about those really quickly. February 15th, starting actually next week through February 15th, there's going to be relocation of sewer and water lines. During that phase, there will be temporary lane shifts. There may be one lane closed for just a little bit as they do work, as any construction site will happen. During the second phase, which is February 16th through June 19th, they will close half the bridge and they will start constructing half the bridge. They will complete that first course of construction approximately June 19th, hopefully a little bit earlier than that, and that time will be given to button it up, make it look fine, because I think we have a 4th of July parade here every year, so we want to make sure that's done right, including the striping, painted correctly. A couple days right after that, they will start construction on the other side of the bridge, which would then give us one open lane. Really, really key things here is one is that this town, this council, the administrator, everyone involved in local government has been very much focused on safety. And the safety of the children on Gutierrez School, safety of the residents downtown, and both ways. Giving access to ambulance, giving access to fire, police, all of these things will be there, which is just outstanding. There's, again, it's just a massive amount of effort. I think, I'd like to say that Mr. Administrator, nice job on all of this. He and I worked very closely, and we did a lot of it in the background, not to make a spectacle, but just to work together. And again, the governor's office, the treasurer, and the director's office were just... We've come a long way from very difficult meetings to a great ending here. So, again, a little off script, but it was important enough to bring out that this council, the administrator, and the town in general felt it so important and just critical for business. Did I mention business? Critical for business downtown. Oh, did I also mention that the bike path bridge will be open? Won't be affected at all. So all of that traffic will move with no issues. So. Does it mean there's not going to be any problems? Of course there's going to be problems. There will be signage. There will be alternate routes that will be shown correctly. We're hoping that this will be a southbound lane, meaning you can only go south because you got to pick one, right? You can't have open and back and forth all the time. It just creates a whole issue. But we'll have good signage. We're going to spend that time, effort, and energy to make it as painless as possible. And I think I said that it would be done on time, but through August 28th. Which, if you note that date, is before school opens. Another key thing. The administrator pointed out to me today that Gutierrez School closed early today because there was a problem with the sewer backed up. And you say, oh my goodness, this was apropos to all the things we've been talking about, of being able to get the kids out and get staff out. Everybody's important if there's an issue over there. And this brought to light that the importance of that access back and forth. So I went on a little bit too long. I apologize, but this is so important and so wonderful, and I know we're all very happy about this. So, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Town Council. The first item on this evening's agenda is the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
The next item is item A1. This is submission of minutes of October 9th, 2019.
Motion to approve previous minutes?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is an advertised public hearing concerning a potential resolution to sell real property, sometimes referred to as Gooding Plaza, Gooding Avenue, Plat 118, lots 1 and 2. The draft resolution is attached. There's also laid on a memorandum provided by the town administrator and tax assessor.
So before I open the public hearing, I'm going to see if I can just give just an overview of how we got to where we are at this moment. 1958, the town signed a lease agreement, a 99-year lease for this property to be developed, and that's obviously you know what it looks like today and what happened with all of that. As part of the lease agreement, the 99-year lease, at this part of where we are right now, there was an opportunity and a requirement to look at it and potentially and absolutely renegotiate. The town worked with the owners or the leasee and said, what can we do here? And we talked about it. We couldn't find that place where we could agree upon, and they offered purchasing the property. So I'm going to stop right there for a moment and say, well, why didn't this go out to public bid? Because there was a lease agreement, and the lease agreement said this is what has to happen there. Only that the lessor, help me out, which one is it, the leasee or the lessor? Lessor.
The lessee.
Lessee. Let's see, I didn't even have that one right. How nice. So the lessee had the only opportunity to purchase if, in fact, we wanted to do that. Obviously, we're here now because the town sees the value in selling the property. Selling it for $2.8 million. Why that? We had an appraisal done on the property by a professional appraisal company who gave us that number, and that's the selling price on it. So that's a real quick one to understand. Part of the requirements of this sale and a mutual agreement was to green the parking lot. We're going to go through a couple of those things in a moment. Greening the parking lot means it's better for the environment, right? So there's less going into our drinking water and water in the bay, keeping sand and silt and oils and all of that from leaching in there. Improving the property. There was real no motivation on, I'm going to get it wrong again, the lessee's side of things to put a lot of money into it because it wasn't theirs. They didn't know where it was going. It's an opportunity for it to be improved, and there's economic development involved with that, of course. That's a general gist of it. I skipped something. I'm sorry. Part of also the mutual agreement was for parking. There is a fire department right there. So as part of our focus, it was mutually agreed upon that there are X amount of spaces that will be forever available to the fire department / commuter. But there's a lot more parking there too, but that will always be there for the use of our firefighters and, of course, commuters too. Did I skip anything that we wanted to cover before I open the public hearing?
I think that's it.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? I have a lot of paper here. I'm assuming that you're here to speak in favor. So, yes. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. Steve McGilvray on behalf of Gooding Realty Corp. We were here not too long ago. We presented a landscape plan. That plan was conceptual in nature. We will be coming up with a future conditions plan if the resolution is passed, which will be more detailed and will be a negotiation back and forth. But in any event, tonight, as we promised last time, we brought the architect John Lusk, who has put together some conceptual plans for what the facade could look like. And I think Mr. Chairman put it excellently. Both sides here have a incentive to improve the property once it's sold. The town wants this kind of gateway area to the town to look better. The tenant and hopefully future owner wants to improve the property, increase its value, drive better and more business to the property. So there really is a mutual kind of understanding and goals here. So with that, I'm going to have Mr. Lusk come up, if that's okay, and he can kind of explain what the lessee has been looking at in terms of potential improvements to the building. I also have Colgate Cyril, if you'll remember from last time. He's the landscape architect. He's here if anybody has any questions about the landscape. And finally, Ray DeLeo is also here. He's the president of Gooding Realty. So if anybody has questions that are appropriate for him, he's here to answer those as well. Absent questions, we'll just let Mr. Lusk kind of do a quick presentation and then see what your pleasure is.
Good evening. I'm John Lusk,
Welcome.
the architect for the project, and I'm glad to be here tonight to show you what we have put together so far. Again, I want to comment that this is conceptual, and whatever we have is only going to get better as we get into the actual work of it. And the concept was basically to do something, again, that was a nice entrance piece into Bristol. We use kind of as our influence at this point in time the architecture of the Bank of Newport, which is on the corner, and the People's Credit Union, blending them into the plaza to create a new aesthetic. We also looked at ideas like lighting and signage. Now, we didn't change any of the tenants or anything at this point. And again, the signage is conceptual, but similar like we did over on State Street at 17, we're looking at LED lighting, which is very subtle, lights the board up. It's also green because we aren't creating light pollution on the site. And we also looked at the landscape plan and are already beginning to integrate some of those features and things into the conceptual plans.
Can you point that back to the audience so they can see some of those photos that are there?
This one you want to talk about first?
Because we've got nice clear copies here.
Okay.
So
This
you don't
is,
have to. You can talk to us, but I just wanted the audience
Yeah.
to see what we were looking at.
That is the concept board to show us some of the ideas and things that we were looking at as features and things that we feel would do two things. One, it would create an aesthetic that's very appealing. And even though we're not trying to recreate historic Bristol, it does pick up on some of the features and different characteristics that are part of what makes Bristol Bristol. And, we really feel that, this combined with the landscaping is going to make it more appealing for tenants. It'll help the tenants as well because of the fact that I think doing this right, the Bristol Shopping Center becomes more and more of a destination. And, of course, myself, I'm hoping that destination means it brings them into downtown Bristol as well. These are just some plans to sort of show quickly. There's certain things with the buildings that are a little bit quirky, and I wouldn't say that we're 100% there yet because, again, that's part of the development. But this is sort of an aesthetic at the end by the People's Bank. And you can see with the columns and the signage board and everything, we kept it simple and honest. But I think that it really creates much more of a village image than a strip mall or shopping center, which is what we really want to do. And the last board is the other end. We have kept the original brick, but again, we brought it up with our components and things, and this end was more influenced by the aesthetic and architectural elements of Bank Newport, which is the entrance at that end. And I think it also works because while it complements the work at the other end of the plaza, it's not just an exact replica. There's a rhythm and there's a feeling to it that the different businesses and things, it's an image that they can use in setting up their businesses within this upgrade. So that's really kind of the program in a nutshell, and I'm certainly glad to take any questions that anybody has.
No, that was outstanding. Thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome.
My colleagues have any questions? No? Thank you.
If you have any other questions now or any other time, we're here to answer them.
I know that you have the landscape architect here.
Yes.
Do you want to give us, I know that there was a lot of time spent at the last meeting, but do you
Yeah,
want to
sure.
just if we could just get a quick overview again of what's being done?
Sure. Mr. Cyril?
Please.
So this plan, we looked at the issues of safety in the beginning because the parking lot's wide open. You can take a diagonal anywhere, which many people do. We looked at the minimum width near the buildings where everyone's crossing and going in. In some places that's a little tight right now. We also looked at the fact that the parking as it stands now has aisle lengths that are far wider than the codes or anyone requires. So you can begin just with the surface that's there now to take up asphalt, take it away, and still have almost the same number of cars. We also looked at the handicap spaces being located in much more useful spaces and van spaces and so on. The open spaces that are, a lot of the islands are at least 10 feet wide, and that's wide enough to really sustain plant material. In this particular instance, the main entrance, which is the main entrance that's here, right? Plus about this much and about that much, all pitches to it. And by leaving gaps in the, actually curving these islands, but leaving gaps in them, you can have water go into them. It can spend time there, it can percolate, and then it can move down into the already existing system that's there. So it's the beginning of actually trying to help green, in a way, some of the runoff in the system. So again, we're taking away something that's not needed, and we're able to add both plant material and some cleansing of the parking, just with the parking lot like it is. You can go on more and change it, and that may be something that comes along after. But just intervening at this point, you can do a great deal for issues of safety, issues of how it looks in landscape, organization, where I parked, how I walk, my safety, and ultimately the start of some stormwater mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there's more detail to both of those plans, so if you have any additional questions, we can answer them, but without taking too much additional time. That's really the concept for both the landscape and the facade. So I think it looks pretty exciting, even at this initial stage.
Agreed.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just had
Yes, please.
I just had a question around timing of these. Is there any set plan?
There is a timing element. The town was very adamant that this not just be, it's going to happen someday. I don't actually know what certain things are supposed to happen within the first year, and then there's some timelines after that, if I recall.
Yes.
But the town has been adamant that it move along at an appropriate pace and not be. Not just drag on forever and be an empty promise. From the lessee's standpoint, from Gooding's standpoint, they have every incentive to. These are improvements that they've been wanting to do for some time, but they just couldn't because it didn't make sense as a lessee to pour money into property they didn't own.
Of course.
So they have kind of a built-up desire and demand on their side to move forward quickly. But that's something I think we'll be talking about when we look at the future conditions plan. As far as what happens when. But that is something that is being thought about by the town representatives and Gooding.
Part of that, and I can answer part of that, there is a couple of timelines, including when the greening of the parking lot needs to happen, the facade changes and improvements need to happen, and then there's longer term past that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Good.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Is there anyone else to speak in favor?
Good evening. I'm Tony Mortini. I'm the chairman of the Conservation Commission here.
Tony, welcome. I neglected to ask that anyone that, if you've come up and spoken already, if you could put your name on that pad over there. You're there now. If you don't mind, you don't have to do it right now, but
All right,
just before you go.
I'll do it a little later then.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm the chair of the Conservation Commission here. Importantly, also, I sit on a couple of committees that Save the Bay. So when I saw this plan, my first thought was, this looks great. So I'm speaking in favor. You know, as someone said, it's sort of a plain of asphalt where all of the water just filters down into Silver Creek often and makes it into our harbor, the oils and the gases and the salt in the winter and so forth. So it's really kind of worst-case scenario for stormwater. So seeing plantings and seeing greenery was really welcome. So I then thought, well, I'm not an expert in this. Let's go talk to somebody who is. So Aaron and I actually went last Monday. We talked to a couple of people that many of you here know. Wenley Ferguson, who's a program manager, is now involved in the golf course project, and she was involved in the town beach project. And Kate McPherson, who's the river keeper for Save the Bay. So we just went with the conceptual plans you just saw, spent 45 minutes to an hour with them, and just sort of picked their brains, and almost like they just sort of brainstormed thoughts. So the main takeaway here is this is really good. It's much better than was there, with a little extra tweaking, and I was delighted to hear there will be more plans. We'll go back and forth on those. We can make it even better. So the few things, and it's really just short of a handful of things. The first one is in the green areas, those 10-foot wide strips that'll collect the stormwater. Try to put as many of those around the existing catch basins as possible. There's still 5 or 6 catch basins that are out in the asphalt, and that's kind of the worst possible place for them to be in terms of stormwater mitigation. Mm-hmm. So try to make this so that there's much of that green around the stormwater basins as possible. Wenley was talking about these collars you can put on them as well to raise them so that the first flush, which is the important one, of stormwater goes down into the dirt, into the mitigation, rather than right into the storm drain. So it essentially goes into that, like this last hour we've seen, and then once that sort of gets saturated, it can then go into the storm basin. So the storm drains are essentially handling overflow, right? So that's kind of the first one. The second one, there's a lot of green. You just saw a little bit of it, a lot of green going around the buildings, right? New green, new trim. Again, take that opportunity to make that as friendly to stormwater catchment and mitigation as possible as well. There are planters that are shown. It's unclear to us, for instance, whether there was a drain at the bottom, which would be great, come through the planter. That itself is stormwater mitigation measure down into the rest of the greenery. So use the plantings, because that'll also catch rain off the roofs, right? As soon as it comes off the roof, those things will catch it. So as much of that green, make that ready for stormwater mitigation as well. This is the easiest one of them all, plant native species. The back page has a lot of suggested trees and bushes. Most of them are native. Let's just make them 100% native in this thing so we, again, cut down the invasives. Our goal should be to get as close as possible to the DEM guidelines for stormwater mitigation in a project like this, which is, we're not going to get there, but it's like 50% of the surface should be permeable, right? This is 100% impermeable right now. 50% permeable, that's the DEM guideline, and be able to handle 50% of the stormwater. We realize that's probably impractical. But if we can, through a combination of the greening, and there's a lot of green going in there. So, a combination of the greening and these stormwater management practices handle 50% of the stormwater that hits that parking lot. That would make a huge impact on Silver Creek, a huge impact on the harbor. And we have the opportunity, it sounds like, to just sort of talk this through as we go through planning this project. We've seen at the town beach, this sort of project has been miraculous, right? We were shutting down how many times? 25, 30 times a year or something. Put in this, a system not unlike this with low impact development and so forth, and we closed down once or twice now. I mean, it's just dramatic. A lot of stuff comes off parking lots. And we have a great opportunity to do that. I think we should set that as our goal, to optimize this design, handle this stormwater, and do 2 really cool things at the same time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else? Go ahead.
Mr. Martini, don't forget to write your name down on the. Oh, okay.
And if you did speak already, if you could put your name down, please.
Can I just add a little bit to? Oh, is this public hearing?
It's public hearing.
So
yeah.
we'll touch on everything later.
Absolutely. Is there anyone else to speak in favor? Is there anyone else to speak in favor? Is there anyone else to speak in favor? Is there anyone to speak against? Is there anyone to speak against? Is there anyone to speak against?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, I was just going to add to Mr. Mortini's points. And when we had the meeting over there at Fields Point, it was you could tell that there was a lot of excitement around the room that this kind of stuff was going on, that a town could work with a private company during a real estate transaction to actually come up with some plans to green up this property and everything like that. And I think it's going to make a huge difference. I went through that property today when it was raining, and I saw the first flush that went through there, and you could just see the all the water just flowing into the storm drains that eventually kind of make their way into our water systems and everything like that. And so, I mean, this is one of the big issues that we're going to face, new generations and everything like that, is we're going to be asking ourselves, what did we do to put into place the infrastructure that we needed to make sure that we have drainage and that flooding issues and things like that aren't causing too much harm to our infrastructure in our town and everything like that. I think the other thing that they may have been a little bit concerned about, and I just want to make sure to go on the record on this, was that there be plenty of maintenance on the stormwater infrastructure. Sometimes, people get a little bit lazy on the maintenance and everything like that, and it can cause a lot of the problems with the invasive plants and everything. Mm-hmm. They had some great things to say about working with Mr. Searle. And so they spoke very positively about some of the work that you had done and the times and some of the work that you've done on this kind of stuff in the past. And so I'm pretty excited about it. I think what we have here, I think, is a really cool case study going on in Bristol, where we can say, hey, look at what we've been doing. We have this town beach. We have this partnership that occurred with a private real estate company. And we have the greening or a master plan for our Mount Hope High School parking lot now. We're really taking a look at some of these impervious surfaces, and we're trying to find creative ways to make sure that we're addressing some of these issues that are going to have a huge impact on us in the future. Thank you.
So I skipped part of it, and please, I forgot one of the probably key points when I put the beginnings on this. What are we doing with the $2.8 million? It's not going to go into our general fund. The council was adamant on that fact, is that we want that money put in a restricted account, which is, of course, our call. And very much like we do with the Colt Fund, and if you're not familiar with it, that was money left to the town for maintenance on that building. We have a policy in place that only up to 90% can be used of the proceeds on that, and that's what we want to do here. And the point is that this money will continue to grow, and this council was very concerned about where does it go, and we've talked about a multitude of things, including capital projects like things that you see happening around town right now. And things like that are what keep our tax rate down while having this money work for us to do the projects that we need to get done. We're going to have a conversation in a little while about trash trucks. That's a capital project. I mean, there's millions of dollars that we need to spend. This helps offset those costs. And again, I'll say it one more time. This council was very adamant about not having it go into the general fund. That's not a bad thing, but we want it there for now and in the future to use this money. So
yeah, excellent.
I'm sorry.
That's great.
So please.
No, I agree 100%, obviously. Initially, I was not very favorable of the purchase, but once you work through the logistics and the numbers, it only makes a whole lot of sense. It really does. When, I looked at it, it's at the rate that we get right now, $10,000 a year. With the amount of 2.8, that would take 280 years to get that money. So when you think about it, and I'm sure there probably would be some increases along the way. However, it would never come anywhere near that. But to the chairman's point, we certainly have better things that we can do. I know that the caretakers will do a great job there. I know they have someone looking down on them that be very proud of what they're doing. The elder, DeLeo, and I certainly had a few conversations with him, and, he's looking down and says, see, they doing it for me. So, and I know you folks will make him proud, and not just him, but the town of Bristol as well.
I just wanted to say I'm very, very excited about this sale. With the online coming on board more and more, I think local shopping sees the real strain. And I think with the new plan, which I think is fantastic, it really is going to improve that whole shopping experience. So instead of clicking on Amazon, you're going to want to go down to the Gooding Plaza and go shopping, because it's just overall a better experience. And I also think it's a win-win for the town. We're $2.8 million going to go into an account that's interest-bearing that we can use on capital projects, maintenance, whatever. Also, it's returning to the tax rolls, and also just the environmental impact that Councilman Lay had talked about. So I'm excited for this, and I will make a motion to approve the drafted resolution.
Second.
Yeah.
Is there discussion?
Well, I just wanted to just make
In there?
just a
Yeah.
quick comment in the same, along the same vein. I think this is a culmination of a lot of effort over, maybe a year or a little bit more?
Longer than that.
Approximately about a year.
Yeah.
So when we...
2 years.
Pardon, 2 years?
Yeah. Yeah.
Old enough, too.
I mean, at the end of the meetings, we often go to executive session. These are the kinds of things that we look at, negotiate, discuss, go over all the various options. We have the ability to do that in a confidential setting until we can work out the details. And we went through all of those scenarios about if we got more rent and what it would be like and over time. And the numbers really came out the same. If we got a little bit more, more money, or if we sold it and put the money aside. And I think that we have the history of putting certain funds aside and using that as using the interest. And I think it's not just the Colt Fund, but is it the Terrace Fund? There's another one
Terrace
that we
Fund,
use for
absolutely.
our
Yep.
human services.
Yep.
So I think that we have good history for that. I think there is something, I only own part of the house where I live, and I often think, well, why would I be investing in something that I own the whole thing on? So I do think there's something to be said for that. And so hopefully this is going to be a win for everyone, and we've worked really hard to make sure that the people of Bristol are protected, and that this is in the best interest in our view. Mm-hmm. And I think from the number of people who came out tonight, and I would say the lack of people who did not come to contest it, they probably are in agreement with that.
Mm-hmm. Well put. Mm-hmm. And there's a larger also, and I don't know how much we've talked about it, but the investment in making this a more beautiful property, and more business friendly, which means there's more property taxes coming in. Sorry, right. There's more property taxes coming in from that, which is obviously beneficial. But success breeds success. So when there's success there, success goes also downtown. And we do have Medicom Ave, and we have a lot of other places in Bristol that'll benefit from this. And someone said it as the gateway in, I believe.
Right.
I think that's part of it. And I think that also this will, blight increases, so does success. And I think that whole area will probably see increases. When your neighbor paints their house and yours needs it, sometimes you're a little bit quicker to do it because of that. So.
Yeah.
Anything else?
And one quick thing, and that is just on Tony's point as far as Conservation Commission. I think as we go through the process, they're going to still have to go through whatever approvals and to make sure that the Conservation Commission is working closely with them. And I think that's going to be the case for all the boards.
So, and you heard a term, future plan. The planning board has its process that it's going to go through, and our goal here, as I sat and others sat with negotiations, was that it's going to go through the process, but we didn't want to add extra steps. We wanted to make sure that these requirements were met, but it'll go through our boards and commissions who are well equipped to make sure that those things happen correctly on both sides. Okay. Mr. Administrator?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that administration is also in favor of the sale, including the recommendations of the department heads. One of our concerns was the parking for the volunteer fire department, and that shall be, as you stated, preserved for the future. So we're also in favor of it.
And also the park and ride.
And the commuter parking.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the... Sorry, I'm looking for my notes.
The draft resolution?
Yeah, yes, for the resolution. I apologize. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And wish you the best.
I'm Ray DeLeo. I'd just like to speak on behalf of Gooding Realty and to thank you, and especially the committee that did the negotiating, the administrator's office. We put a lot of time and work into it, and it didn't take long for us to realize that we were all looking for the same thing, and I think we've accomplished that. And, you know, we're all local people. You know, the Maizano family's here. DeLeo family, and we're not going anywhere. And I just realized the other day it was my 25th year with Gooding, so I don't know if I'll put in another 25. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck. I wish the best.
Yeah.
Thank
Good
you.
stuff.
Yeah.
Mr. Clerk.
The next item, Mr. Chairman and members of the Town Council, is the second reading for adoption of Ordinance 2019-13, and this was to consider the wastewater treatment facility surcharge changes.
Motion to approve the second reading for adoption.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is item C2, and this is the second reading for adoption of Ordinance 2019-14, and this is a new article to allow for work in roadway, highways, and streets, and to consider curb-to-curb paving in those areas. There is a amended version, including some additional notes as provided by the Director of Public Works as item 2A.
So those amended notes, the adjustments include more latitude in regards to the director's input on this. Specifically, the best example that was given to me was if they're working, if a utility is working on a fire hydrant and they're cutting a 2x2 cut right next to the curb, there's no need to go all the way. So there will be flexibility in regards to what the director says yes and no to, but a main going down the middle of the road will need to comply to this curb to curb. So that's a quick overview.
Yeah. I think this is a great ordinance. I'll make a motion to approve the second reading for adoption. And I just want to say I think having the DPW check is really going to help improve our infrastructure and just making sure a quality job is done.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
Just quick, he's coming back. I was going to ask, I know currently we have a 5-year moratorium on new roads. Now, how would this impact? We extend this with a longer period of time. Am I correct, Director?
I don't think I understand your question,
Councilman. What we have currently, if it's a new paving,
correct.
Okay, there's a 5-year moratorium on that, correct?
Correct.
Now, this here extends that. Am I correct? Not necessarily on new roads, but if they cut other roads, then they have to pave curb to curb. Am I correct?
Yeah, this really isn't part of the 5-year moratorium piece.
Okay.
It's more about restoration of a road that's excavated for utility purposes, whether it be a new water main or gas main or what have you, subsurface electric, to preserve the road is what it's doing.
The moratorium ordinance is still in effect.
Yeah,
so that was unchanged. That's separate from this.
Okay, good. Thank you.
That'll remain.
The goal behind this was that repair work would be done, and then it was done okay, and then it would get cold, the plow would go by, rip it up, and then we're owning that problem. So this is taking steps to make it so the town taxpayers are not paying for those direct repairs. So.
I just have one other question for the DPW director. In terms of, I imagine that these utility companies have some discretion about replacing lines and everything like this. You don't get the sense that anything like this would deter them from doing the type of maintenance work that would maybe cause problems later or anything like that because of the added cost of doing that?
I haven't heard that as a counter-argument to the ordinance, that it would prohibit them. What I did hear was it will add to their incurred costs because of the road restoration piece being added to it. As you know, right now, what happens is they repair the trench plus a little bit overcut, and in some cases I don't agree with the repair that's being made. What this does is add a little bit of teeth to the ordinance to give us a little bit better product in the end, and also allows some discretion on my part for other areas as well, or on the part of the Public Works Director should I not be here. Because as you can drive around some of these roads today that are currently under construction or just haven't gone through construction, you can ask yourself, what are the limits of the paving on this? As it stands today, it would be a little over the width of the trench. And what does that do to the edge of the road or the middle of the road? And this kind of answers that question.
Yeah, and I imagine that it ends up costing us more in the long run with the roads getting ripped up and everything like that, we're willing to maybe take that risk that, if there is that deterrent. But, my thing is, anyways, they're going to pass it on to the consumer anyway, so it's not really hitting their bottom line.
Right. But what I'd like to add as well, we meaning the town of Bristol, tries to put together a 3-year plan that we look down the road and say, we're looking at repairing or resurfacing these roads. We send that list to the utility companies so that if they've got infrastructure that they want to fix and they go ahead and fix it as part of our 3-year program, then obviously that's the right thing for them to do, and we're certainly not going to make them do a curb-to-curb repair if we're coming in to fix the road. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of a shared partnership, and this will put a little bit of push behind that to say, hey, look, take a look at these, and maybe you want to update your infrastructure. Or if they have a problem, it gives them an opportunity to come to us and say, hey, look, can you put this road off for a year? We want to do something, but we can't get to it based on our capital plan right now. So that it develops a dialogue that goes beyond, just cutting into the road today. It looks at it down the road. And this will allow that to happen probably in a more reasonable fashion, and give it a little bit of...
And the goal here is not to have the utility companies fix the roads for the town. The goal is very much like you do with a national park, is that you leave it the way you found it. And that's what we need to get done. And we've had some issues with this, so this will help us get there. So.
And it gives the DPW director tracking. I think gives you more visibility into what's going on instead of after the fact. I think it's probably tough for you after the fact.
Yeah, well, I personally get involved in just about every road cut, just so that we can stay on top of that and keep an eye on it for the road infrastructure, because I report directly to the town administrator when it comes to some of these issues, because he gets the phone calls just as much as I do.
Sure.
And this will allow a greater partnership, quite frankly, in my opinion, with the utility companies looking down the road a bit. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the right thing to do. And again, as the chairman said, that we're not here to push a full road restoration process for the town-wide, but we do want to make sure that our residents are covered by saying, hey, look, you ripped the road up, we need to restore it to a reasonable fashion. And I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a great...
Mm-hmm. Any other discussion? Mm-hmm. So we have a motion and a second for adoption. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And it is the amended version that you're adopting, right?
Yes, in
Correct.
fact it is.
Mm-hmm. The next item, Mr. Chairman and members of the Town Council, is the second reading for adoption of Ordinance 2019-15. The Council will recall that this has to do with a request of a current Class BV limited alcoholic beverage license who is asking Council consideration to upgrade that license. The public hearing on the license itself is scheduled for November 20th, so I suggest, as normal practice, that this would be also continued for vote on the same night.
Motion to continue to the November 20th meeting.
Second.
So, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is Ordinance 2019-16. This item considers a no parking space in the vicinity of, rather on Milk Street in the vicinity of the Canario residence.
Based on all the recommendations, make a motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Adopt. Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Similarly, this ordinance 2019-17, which is item C5, considers a similar spot in the vicinity of the Enos residence. This is the first reading.
Motion to approve the first reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is item C6. This is ordinance 2019-18. This is a retitle of the existing peddlers, hawkers, itinerant vendors ordinance to include mobile food establishments, and this is the first reading. Mobile food establishments are sometimes called food trucks.
Make a motion to approve the first reading.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Just one quick question. I just
Yeah,
want to be
Amy.
clear, Amy. This is in relation to state law that passes that? Am I remembering correctly?
You are remembering correctly, and this is an initial draft for the council's consideration. State law now provides that Department of Business Regulation shall issue statewide permits for food trucks, but cities and towns are authorized to issue corresponding local permits. The authority that we have to regulate food trucks is limited to location, hours of operation, noise, and number of permits that the town can choose to grant. So this draft, if you look at page 2, section 19-123, just as a starting point for discussion, it's pegged at 3. That is completely in your discretion to eliminate that limit, to raise it, keep it at 3. That can be changed from time to time at your discretion. The next section, 19-124, again, simply as a starting point for your discussion and consideration, this draft includes a prohibition on food trucks being located in downtown Bristol, and we've attempted to define that geographically more or less from the Papa Squash area east to Wood Street down to Hope and Wally, and then back north. So those are 2 decision points for the council. I will note that this draft does not affect 4th of July issued permits, so food trucks, ice cream trucks will still need to receive the appropriate permits for operation on the 4th of July, just as they always have. And the final provision of the ordinance on page 3 exempts ice cream and lemonade trucks or any any food truck that stops for no longer than 10 minutes in a single location. The thought is treat those differently than the taco trucks that park for an hour, 2 hours at a time. So this is mostly in your discretion to consider adopting those provisions. The rest of it is boilerplate. The fees are set by state law. The idea of the permits themselves, electronic submission, that's all dictated by state law. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
I have a couple of questions just to clarify for myself. So we have the 4th of July permits that are issued, particularly around the day of. So there are food trucks at the concerts, for example, and we've left that up to the 4th of July's discretion because that's a fundraiser for them. And also there have been other instances where people have brought in food trucks in the downtown area for specific purposes. I mean, one of the fire departments had done it as a food truck festival, and different kinds of events like that. So is that, if somebody wants to do that as a fundraising event, is it on our property and we say, okay, is that okay? So there'll be like a cluster of them?
So as far as town-owned property in the downtown area, we could draft an exemption for that. And again, the prohibition against food trucks in the downtown area, that's up to you to change, to eliminate if necessary. The town would issue separate permits for food trucks located on public property, and also separate event permits for large mass gatherings. So there's a few different types of, beyond the standard food truck permit permitting operation in the town.
Well, I think the issue that's come up with food trucks in the downtown area has been, the cost of doing business, you know, you're citing them right next door to a brick and mortar restaurant, for example, and it's like a, you know, much less expensive operation to run. So I think in general to just come and park because they just, you know, if they're going to be able to do that now. So we've sort of prohibited that in the past, right? So if they're going to be able to do that, then I agree that it should not be in the downtown. All they want to just make sure is that if we have an event and a charity wants to be able to do like a food truck event where there's, you know, 8, 10, 12 of them, that would fall, that's not prohibited here or becomes a big project to do. I don't know if that's the mass gathering permit.
We can make it clear that the council can retain the authority to grant a permit for food truck operation in the downtown area in connection with events on public property and in connection with charitable events.
Because it's usually like a one-day event type of thing, you know.
Does that require revision to this?
Yes.
Okay.
Amy, Councilwoman Perrella makes a lot of good points. So,
Agreed.
So for the second reading, you're going to say these are going to be kind of specifically called out so we can review them? These sort of different situations?
I'm sorry.
Are you going to on the second reading? Are we going to call out
Yes.
these specific types of
Yes, the second
scenarios that she's pointing out? Because I think they're.
If that's the council's pleasure, we'll draft specific exemptions to make it very clear.
I just think it's good. It's
Agreed.
right to the point, and I think we don't get into any problems,
Got it.
with misreadings.
Very good. Certainly. To the downtown
colleagues,
area, I want to make sure that I'm clear with that, because Mary made a good point in terms of the restaurants, and we certainly do not want to interfere that. We, in no way, we allow that here. Am I correct?
Not to just come up, I think it's not to just come up and park, is that right? Just to come up and park and say, I'm going to park on Hope Street for the next, or State Street for the next 2 hours.
So this draft that you have in front of you would not allow food trucks in the downtown area for any purpose. If the council wants to adopt a limited, exemption for charitable events, we can draft it that way. For events on public property, we can draft it that way. And what I'm really looking for feedback on as well is, does the council want to set some kind of a maximum number of food truck permits that the town will issue, or is that unnecessary?
Yeah, because I'm thinking about the firemen's. They're usually down at Independence Park. That's the one that comes to mind, where they have the food truck event, and they have a number of food trucks there. So I just, Councilwoman Perrella talked about that scenario. I just want to make sure it's called out and it's clear, and we know how to handle those types of event, how that falls.
I would say there's three things that pop into my head. One is the 4th of July concert series that has food trucks, and that's a fundraiser, and over the time we've just given them the ability to organize their own stuff.
Right.
The other one is they haven't had it the last couple of years, but the fire department has done this nice food truck thing down at Independence Park, and that's like a one-day kind of event. And the other one that just came to my mind is now that the State Street Fair is back, they have some kind of like a hybrid, some food trucks and some local restaurants that have done maybe like an outdoor version or a pop-up or whatever you want to call it. So I don't know that, and they haven't really come to us for permission to do that. They came to us to get the okay to close that section of State Street and run the event, and and working with us with the police and so forth. So I think those are the kind of things that if they are soliciting food trucks, because sometimes they're looking for food. The Gutierrez PTO event, also I think might have had 1 or 2 food trucks there. People are sometimes looking for something to be there, and they think it's easier than maybe setting up their own food stations and so forth. So as long as we have the ability to not hinder them and make it a huge project, I think that's what I would like to see done. Not just, and then I don't know if we need to put a cap or not. I'm not sure about just people coming into park, because that's something that we've never really wanted before. And people have come to us and asked, well, they said we could go on to such and such a business's property and set up, and we've said, no, we're not giving you that permit. So, I think those are the situations that we've run into.
Mm-hmm.
So. That's just my view.
So I just have a quick question for our solicitor, and I'm pretty sure I have a proper understanding of this ordinance and what we're trying to do. There's obviously the exclusion zone, which wouldn't allow anybody to operate within the boundaries of that exclusion zone. But then there's the places outside of the exclusion zone, so like Medicom Avenue and places like that, where you might have mobile food trucks that are looking to do commerce and everything like that. So one example would be perhaps maybe if the new brewery on Medicom collaborated with a food truck to every day of the week, maybe have a different food truck come out to his place, and then this is kind of a new thing where these food trucks get followings, right? And so people from all over the state, they're paying attention to social media to find out where this food truck is going to go next. And so when they go to Bristol, then all of a sudden you have 15 to 20 people coming into Bristol, going to the food truck, getting the food that they want to get, going to the brewery, and then doing their shopping or whatever. Okay, so that I get the understanding of that and how that part works. But I do want to turn your attention to Section 19-121 and that last sentence right there. It says a single municipal mobile food establishment permit shall be required to operate within the town. And additional permits shall not be required for operation on more than one day and or in more than one location in the same calendar year. And then we have Section 19-123 about the number of permits granted. Okay? So my question for you is, once we grant a permit for somebody to, collaborate with the brewery or whatever, does that mean that we can only issue 2 more that year? That one permit is spoken for.
Yes.
And so that's why if we have, and so it's really the discretion of the who makes the decision if somebody wants to operate on Medicom Avenue. Then do they just apply for the permit, and it's kind of like liquor licenses, right?
First come, first serve.
Yeah. Okay.
So I am somewhat getting the sense of the council that you may not think it's appropriate to set a cap for food trucks in general. Or at least, if we're prohibiting...
Actually, I don't particularly have a problem with the cap.
No.
I agree that Councilman Perella, I think, hit it spot on in regards to what we do want that flexibility on. I think we've covered that, so we don't have to hit it again. But on the cap, I don't have opposition to a cap. But
okay.
I'm open to that dialogue with my colleagues.
I guess like my concern with the cap would be, on January 1st, we have 3. Do 3 people on January 1st get that, and then they're operating throughout the year with that permit? Right?
Yes, that would be it.
That would. I mean, they could come into town any time then.
Yes.
Yeah. Unless there was an expiration that we could put on the permit, but I don't know if the state law allows us to do that.
It does not. It's the state law mandates that we issue permits that are valid for 1 year.
Okay.
But then we could always amend the ordinance to increase it, right?
Exactly right.
Absolutely.
We do that with the liquor permits all the time.
Okay.
We decrease them and increase them.
So they would come to us then, and we would say, this seems to be a bona fide food truck business that wants to do business here. We will increase our number of permits from 4 to 5 so that they can apply for this.
Yes.
But anybody could still pop in. It's not like we can assign that permit to them.
Correct. And the other section I should bring to your attention is on the last page, 19-132. This draft would make the town clerk the permitting authority for food truck permits, because under state law, as long as the permit application complies with our ordinance, we don't have discretion to it's permitting is not quite the same as licensing. We wouldn't have discretion to deny a permit. Where you would have discretion and where the council would be the permitting authority would be temporary mass gathering permits, so large events, festivals, and permits for events proposed to be located on public property. And for those types of permits, the applicant would be required to appear before you. So not a public hearing, but a personal appearance before the council would be required.
In this ordinance on the second read, could we spell out what is a temporary mass gathering? What is that? What does that entail?
So
is that listed?
It is not drafted as with a definitions section, but it's defined in 19-130. That's starting on the bottom of page 2 and continuing on page 3. So for purposes of this section, it's 500 or more, or an event that lasts for more than 2 hours. So essentially a festival, but that definition is in there.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Can I clarify one other point, if you don't mind? So we have, as I mentioned, have had people come in and say, such and such a property said we can set up, and we've said no. But by the same token, we have, other private property. For example, like Mount Hope Farm, as I'm looking out, they'll have maybe a food truck at their farmer's market. I don't see where that's a problem. Would they have to get a permit, or is that their own thing to do?
This ordinance would extend to all food trucks operating in the town of Bristol, whether on public property or private property. For food trucks on public property, they would be required to obtain a permit from the council for public property events.
Right.
But yes, if the question is, would this apply to food trucks on private property, the answer is yes.
So they would just come to the clerk, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So there's no regulation in that, they would just come to get there, but that's part of the 3? See, this is where it gets a little bit like, I think that we don't want to have like a zillion of them everywhere. But I don't know if there's some way to break this down, because if you have like a weekly farmer's market, like for the season, let's say, that is like a once a week event for 3 or 4 hours. That's not like every day that they've got the ability to come and park. So to me, there's almost like, you almost need like 2 categories of permits. Do you know what I mean? Like, not to say that same food truck may not want to do something else in town, but if they're going to do that, then I think that is like, okay, they don't need to come, they're going to be here for, like, I don't think that should be part of, like, say, the 3. Do you know what I'm saying? If there's some ongoing event, like, I don't know if you can carve out some sort of category for, like, ongoing events where, I don't even know if they still have it. I don't go to, but, I mean, a lot of the farmers markets have that. So what are you going to do about that? Or the once a month for 2 months, you know what I mean, type of event.
Amy, can you carve those out? Or does that not allow?
Yes, we can, because I think with state law giving us the authority to regulate location and number of permits, we can combine those such that, and hours of operation. I think we can work something out on that.
Okay. I think, once again, I think Mary captured the feel of this quite well. We're not looking to limit. And at the same time, we are, right? But we don't want to take away from, I think that was a great example, Mount Hope Farm, but we don't want trucks everywhere, because the local businesses, the people who employ men and women, the people that we knock on their door and we say, can you support our Little League team, are the ones that get that first priority in my head. That doesn't mean we preclude food trucks, but those are the people that we're knocking on the door and asking them for something. We also need to be there for them. So I think I think Mary captured this quite well. Is there anything else that we wanted to add for this adjustments for our second reading on this?
I think when Mary referred to the fire department at Independence Park and a couple of the other events
that's
there,
perfect.
I think that's pretty much captured actually in 132-132 when we talk, because those folks would have to come before the council anyway. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's pretty well done through that. As far as the number of 3 there, I'm not sure who picked that number, but I would suggest that we bump that up to 5.
Or, for the solicitor, another question. I think what Mary Councilwoman Perella was talking about, right, was is there a way that we can create certain zones where there might be 3 permits in this zone and then 5 permits in this zone? That's what I think the question was, right? So if we create Mount Hope Farm as a zone,
that's one way to do it.
There would, if a brewing festival came to Mount Hope Farm, then there'd be food there and people wouldn't be,
We absolutely can, and I will work with Director of Community Development on that, and the administrator as well. So
I wasn't thinking of zones, but that might be one way to do it. I mean, I was thinking more like, if they were like a weekly event or a month, for X number of months. I mean, like, suppose somebody wanted to have a food truck wedding. than coming here for 5 hours or something. Like, if it's going to be less, I would say more like maybe in hours like that, or something like, I don't know if it's zones or if it's hours, but I think it would be more in hours over a certain amount of time.
So making a distinction between one-time events versus recurring events?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, like if you see on other places, certain food trucks, and you see it in Rhode Island too, where they'll advertise, like every, certain food trucks just park in certain places for lunches, for example, like in downtown Providence, wherever. To me, that's like a regular occurring thing. Those are the ones that maybe we would want to have limited. But the ones that somebody's going to be like on private property at an event, not just because I'm going to pay you to use your parking lot, but because, this is part of the farmers market experience. Do you know what I mean? I think those kind of things. There's a lot of differentiation. It's like subtle differences in some ways. Like, it's clear in my mind, but it may not be in other people's. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's a little bit complicated, but it's like so open out there.
Good. I was going to say, I think we can get quite convoluted. I think there is such a wide range in latitude already with the existing proposal here that it really allows us to do many things,
Well,
so
maybe
I'm not
you
so
take
sure.
a look back and just figure it out. Yeah, but if you can only have 3.
So typically we don't, this is first reading. We don't typically get this deep into anything on first reading.
We might be hungry.
And the reason why we don't, I'm getting a little bit hungry myself, is that second reading is reserved for the discussion points. So if you're interested in, if you hate this ordinance, that you know that at our second reading, that's the time that you'd want to share it, public or colleagues. So I think we hit some really important points. Amy, I think you grabbed I don't want to even say the gist, I think you got all the particulars on this. If we could get a draft ahead of time and then feed comments through the clerk and not through each other, right? Yeah. And we can share those with you, if anything, ahead of time. And then as long as it's not a substantive change, we can make those changes at second reading, too.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay.
Got it.
So we had we had a motion and a second for first reading. Did Mr. Administrator?
No, I was just, we're going to go back and we're going to rework this, but after listening to all the dialogue, the main issue was the issue that Councilwoman Perella brought up, and that's competition with our brick and mortar restaurants. That's the basics, and that's our interest in this. So I just wanted to ask the question if the council would consider just eliminating the mass gatherings and just do a more watered down, very simple ordinance, no food trucks in the downtown business area, and then we come up with that zone, and it takes the rest of it out. The only concern of that is, Amy, can we go back and add that afterwards? I know there's
Absolutely. We can change this, or the first iteration does not have to be the final iteration.
I just feel as if this could get very complicated and confusing with the, coming with the businesses, with the clerk's office, when they can be there, the conflicts between private property, public property, what events are sponsored by the town, which ones aren't. Maybe we just stick to what our original intention was, and that was, let's keep the food trucks out of our downtown businesses. We don't want a taco truck in front of Nacho Mama's, and that's, I think, what we should maybe consider focusing on. So if we come back with another draft and it's as simple as that, I'm just wondering, would the council consider it?
Well, could I just say, if it said, unless there is a special event that comes before the council, we know, I wouldn't want to see an ordinance that simple when we know 4th of July for 2 weeks at those concerts has food trucks there. And then it creates a problem for who, can they come, can they not come?
Well, with the exception of 4th of July, which is permitted through the 4th of July.
The fire department has done that event for a couple of years. They may not have done it, but if they wanted to do it, that's all I'm saying. So, I just want to make sure that we have that flexibility. I agree. I don't think they should be in downtown Bristol parked in competing with those businesses. So I'm just looking for making sure that there's a carve out for a special event or fundraising events that they can go to the council, and that may be as simple as way that Amy would just write it in like that.
I think the goal is for simplicity is good. And we just want to make sure there's no unintended consequences from making it that simple. So So let's look at this again. If you could come up with this, obviously we need a second draft on this. So we had a motion and a second to signify first reading. I have no idea what we're actually signifying at this point in time, but that's okay. Motion and a second to signify first reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is, where am I? Ordinance, item C7. This is ordinance 2019-19, and this is the first reading of an ordinance to establish rules for short-term rental units.
So I had asked for this back in April, and I know you did a lot of hard work on this. And unfortunately, I would not like to see first reading on this. I'd like from here, if my colleagues are amenable to it, is to call for a workshop and get some input from the public. I know that there's more of these out there than I think we actually know about, and I think it would be most appropriate to have some open dialogue about how this would affect things, how it won't affect things. We're hoping to improve and focus on this. So I don't want a first reading on this. We just call for a public hearing.
I
Okay?
think that's a great idea, especially since...
I'm sorry, I said
this-
public hearing. I apologize. What I meant to say was workshop.
Workshop.
Excuse me.
Yeah, motion to schedule a workshop. Do we need to set a date now, Lou?
We can. I'll work
Second.
with the clerk, and we'll come up with something.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second.
Yeah.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is item D1, and this considers the petition of Michelle Martins on behalf of the Bristol 4th of July Committee, request council consideration for a one-day bingo license to be held on November 20th at 850 Hope Street, which is the VFW. There's lead item recommendations from both the fire and police departments.
Based on all the recommendations, I make a motion to approve it.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item, also from Ms. Martins, is a request to serve and sell alcoholic beverages at the Bristol Maritime Center for an event to be held on December 6, 2019. You have a recommendation provided by the Harbor Master.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Harbor Master?
Hello. They put a late request in the other day to move that to December 13th, not the 6th.
Oh, that's going to ruin everything. I'm sorry.
I know.
Can we amend that motion?
They couldn't get the right band, I guess.
Sorry, we cannot approve that then.
So, who made the motion on that?
I did.
Can you amend your motion?
Amended.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
The next item is item F2, and this is the petition of Sheila Dobbin and Melanie Michaud. Bristol Warren Education Foundation requests council support and sponsorship for the 12th annual Bodacious Bee Spelling Bee.
And you're both here? Excellent. This is your opportunity for... Yes, write your name down, please. So,
What was that word?
so the bee, I'm not familiar with it. Tell me more.
The bee? No, I've seen you there.
Never heard about that.
So I'm Melanie Michaud. I am the co-chair of this event this year. It will be happening on March 7th, 2020 at Roger Williams University. Our theme this year is Be Amazed. We've changed things up, so our game is actually going to be a trivia game instead of a spelling bee.
Oh.
Thank God.
Is Lou out of a job
We will
now?
note that everybody's really happy about that.
Well, I think the council may
and
do
also
very
our
well.
bee mascot has changed up, so that will be being unveiled soon.
Very nice. How does one, if one is interested in going, how does one get tickets?
You can go right on our website, bwedfoundation.org, or see us around town. We'll be selling raffle tickets too at Stop and Shop in Tom's Market.
When do those usually become available?
The raffle tickets or the bee tickets?
The bee tickets.
January.
January.
And then raffle tickets will be soon after. And we have our online auctions. So
And it's a great event.
It is. Thank you.
So who's good at trivia on this council?
I'm actually good at trivia. I've always raised my hand and said I'm horrible at spelling. But
I think we were all horrible at spelling last time.
We had some improvements.
So last year, I checked it with the clerk. Last year, we were silver sponsors at $1,250.
Correct.
What's this council's pleasure?
Well, we love to promote academic excellence, and we think this is great. I'll make a motion to continue as a silver sponsor.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. It's a great event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next.
All right, Mary. Okay.
A shot of winning, Lou. I'm sorry. I'm really excited about this. So.
We better,
Good for you.
The next item is the appointment section of the council docket, and this considers several different public service appointments, the first being the Personnel Board, and this is to consider I would say first, the resignation of Terry Morera of 6 Proto Lane.
I make a motion to approve her resignation with a letter of thank you.
Second.
There's this motion and a second. Lou, how long has Terry been on the Personnel Board? Very long time.
It has been quite a long time.
It's okay.
I think a dozen years at least.
It's 12 years, I believe. It was saying
Maybe
12
more.
years, maybe more. Yeah.
So there's a motion and a second to accept the resignation. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And now you have 2 positions, one to fill an unexpired term to expire this coming December, and also one to fill an unexpired term which will expire in December of 2021. You have the applications of Russell F. O'Connell, Chris Wetterland, and Matthew P. Cabral.
I would nominate Matthew Cabral for the vacant position to expire 2021.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for the 2021 expiration seat. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, so we have one more open seat, which expires actually in December, which would then need a reappointment, but it won't need another
Probably a
interview.
very good chance that they will get reappointed.
Gosh, I'd hope so.
I would move Russell O'Connell.
Second.
Is there any other nominations? Okay. So we have a motion and a second for Russell O'Connell. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is a Harbor Commission Advisory Committee. This has a term this is to fill an unexpired term to expire in August 2022. You have the application of Tor Peterson of 6 Avenir Court.
I make a motion to appoint Mr. Peterson.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to appoint. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. This is the part that I always say thank you. Thank you for everyone that came out tonight and did the interview process with us. We appreciate the interest in the position. We also appreciate the efforts and energies that all of our boards and commissions give to give back to the town. It is not an easy task sometimes. Some boards are more contentious than others in certain points, but they're all extremely important, and this council says thank you. So thank you.
The next item is item H1, and the council will recall that it heard from Amy Bratzos at its last meeting informally regarding Nature's Classroom, with the agreement to have an agenda item on this meeting to consider the KMS PTO's request for council support of this project called Nature's Classroom.
I make a motion we allocate $1,000.
You are an extremely kind person, sir.
Second.
Oops, sorry. Did I go too high? Oh, no.
I was going to say 2.
And that would come from
Council contingencies. So there's a motion and a second. I just wanted to add something on this one, is that typically we don't contribute to field trips, such and so forth, but there was, everybody knows the Herculean effort, the short timeline in regards to having this done, and the amazing experience that the children have on this, and they've been doing this at KMS for quite a few years with wonderful results. And because of all of that we just said is why I think this is in front of us and why we're supporting it to a much higher level than I thought we were going to, but I think that's outstanding. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
Can I just ask one quick thing that maybe our clerk, on behalf of the council, send a letter to our legislators, just to encourage them to act on this issue of field trips early in the legislative session?
We may want to do, it's my understanding that the school committee is already looking into such a thing. Maybe we can ask our clerk to reach out to the school committee, and maybe we can be part of that letter and show our support for this, because
I don't want us to forget it, because it's an important topic, and the way this has evolved is sort of ridiculous, that, limits opportunities for lots of kids all around the state. So,
okay. I think it's an outstanding idea.
No, I agree. I mean, we certainly can support it with a resolution, I'm sure, in the future. No, my thought was that try to provide at least 3 scholarships, at $325 apiece.
I think it's outstanding.
But how much? But that's what I was going to say. They're what, $348 or something?
$325.
$325.
Yeah, 300.
Okay.
So one of the things I noticed, to add on your point, Councilwoman Perella, was that I noticed in the consent agenda, too, there must be some movement afoot where a lot of towns and everybody like that's like writing resolutions and sending them all over the place. And it would really be easy for them to modify that state law to allow for some of these trips to happen.
Well, there is no state law. It was just a rule.
Oh, the Department of Education.
Right,
Sorry.
right,
Yeah.
okay.
It's my understanding the school committee is looking into is having some exclusions on this to allow for some latitude like this, like band trips, such and so forth. So I think it's great. So we have a motion and a second to support with $1,000 from council contingency. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Everybody's going.
I'm going now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Town Council, the next...
Everybody goes.
Ones with 3 scholarships.
Sorry, Lou, go ahead.
That's okay. The next item is item I-1, and this is correspondence from the Harbor Master regarding his recommendation for harbor fee changes.
Greg, good to see you again.
Hello.
Did you want to just give a quick overview on this?
I can give a quick overview if you guys like.
Yes, please.
So we haven't made any recommendations to any changes since 2015. Prices have gone up. Materials gone up, lumber's gone up, electricity, water. The Harbor Commission, as you can see in my memo, they put a little subcommittee together back in the spring. They worked through the summer. They made some recommendations. I looked at their recommendations and agreed with some, and some I think we needed to go a little bit more on. Nothing's really much, 5-6%, usually pretty much across the board. As I was looking at mine, and I hope yours is right. Maybe I forgot to hit the save button. But for commercial fishermen, it was supposed to be $42 a foot, not $44 a foot.
It is not. Yeah, it's showing. So, I was going to say something. I'm glad you caught that. We had a long discussion at that with the Harbor Commission and the fishermen. They made some valid points. And this is just all in trying to keep up with bringing the money in to maintain that without affecting the taxpayers, because that's what we're trying to do down there, and we're falling short just a little bit.
So, Greg, the 44 should be 42?
42 for the commercial fishermen.
Okay.
That should.
For clarity for everyone, we're looking at the Church Street and Rockwell docks. If you go down to commercial fishermen, the current rate is $40 a foot. And the Harbor Commission had suggested 42. You can see the Harbor Master recommendation of 44. In fact, that should be 42, correct?
$42.
And I went to the most recent Harbor Commission meeting and was part of the dialogue on this. And some adjustments were made on other rates to make up for those losses in revenue.
Sure. We went up a little higher on the non-resident mooring fees and the commercial mooring fees. We left the nonprofit moorings alone at $180. We thought that was still appropriate. We did, and I'm requesting a change on how we actually do the billing. Right now we bill via the registration. Well, that could change every year. This year you got a 24-foot boat. Next year you got a 26-foot boat, and we'll never have a base salary of what we're bringing in. So I want to start charging per the size of the slip. So really, a 26-foot boat really fills a 30-foot slip with the outboards, bow pulpit, swim platforms. So they're taking up more space than what they're registered for. But this will give us a base that we're bringing in, for example, let's just say $130,000 a year. We know that's coming in. Plus, if you're a 36-foot boat and a 30-foot slip, we're gonna take you for the next 6 feet as well at whatever rate that is. So we'll always have a base now to work with for budgeting purposes and to move on. Most marinas do it that way.
It makes more sense when you rent a 2-bedroom apartment and say I only need 1 bedroom.
Yeah.
They say that's great, but you're paying for the 2-bedroom apartment.
You're going to pay for it.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
But everybody I've talked to haven't had an issue with this thought process. The other big change is moving the transient rate up to $4 a foot. We've been $3 a foot. We're doing very well with transients, but we're starting to get a lot of big boats. And when these big boats come in, they hook into 100 amps of power. That's a lot of power draw if they're here for a week. So we did some research on it, and marinas charge an additional fee for the power. And that's power, that's water, and that's the pump out. So we're calling it a utility fee. It's pretty standard across the business.
So on the transient dock fees, it's included all of those things. The increase per foot reflects those,
No.
The expenditures.
No. So you'll get if you were coming to Bristol and you're spending the night, you pay $4 a foot, and if you wanted 30 amps of power,
got it.
If you're plugging, that would cost you additional $10 a night.
Understood.
And that can all be captured through our reservation system, through the DOCWA system we've been using. We can put that in there. And as I flip through it, everybody's doing it.
It's a la carte.
And it just gives you a little more.
You want. Yeah.
If you say, I don't want any power, then if you're a sailboat and you want to sit on your generator or whatever it is, then we're not going to charge them.
Any other salient points you want to bring up?
No, not really. I think we're doing well.
Yeah, I know this came up during budget time, and I kind of raised the possibility of maybe instead of increasing like resident fees or something like that this year on, perhaps mooring or the Church Street and Rockwell docks, would there be any possibility of bringing in extra revenue because of all the demand during the 4th of July by having like a peak pricing system for like that weekend or something like that? That way it kind of offsets any revenue needs, and we could keep from raising the rates for our residents? Or
I think that'd be difficult to do because we're limited on the space that we have. We only have 16 transit moorings. We only have 130 feet of dock space to rent out. And there's $50,000 worth of piles that need to be repaired.
It probably wouldn't make a dent in the revenue it would bring in because we don't have the capacity.
Yeah. I mean, even with all the additional transient space we'll put in with the expansion, it's still, I truly believe that if you live on Fatima Drive and you don't own a boat, that they shouldn't be paying for it. That's a privilege being on the water and down on the dock, and it's got to reflect, and we need to be able to make the budget numbers that way, and continue to do all the repair work. I don't know how I'd come into you guys in February, March, and say I need an extra $30,000 in my budget line for maintenance, and not have a way to be bringing that money in, and this is the way we can get it done.
And if we went to that tier system, if we had a bad summer weather-wise, that could completely affect everything.
Yeah, and we're doing well. I think we're roughly around $38,000 this year in transient fees. But the big number is that we turned away $25,000 again this year on potential revenue. So we're getting very popular. We're building a very nice waterfront down there. So they're going to come, and these fees they're reflective. They're marginal changes, but much needed.
Is there any other discussion?
No, I think we're moving in the right direction. The supply and demand curve shows that we are definitely in demand, and I think we should move to adopt or approve the Harbor Master's recommendations for the new fees with that slight change. I think it was the commercial fisherman's fee was 44 and it should be 42.
Correct.
So in my motion, I just want to make sure that's on the record.
Perfect.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Greg.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's huge. Bring a lot of revenue.
Just so it's clear, Mr. Chairman, you're basically amending your fee resolution to include those new fees. I made it clear in the motion, okay?
Thank you.
The next item is
thank you.
the petition of Harry Hoffman of 10 Howe Street, who requests to address the council concerning garbage and recycling collection plan.
Welcome, Mr. Hoffman.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for the opportunity for me to tell you something you did wrong.
Oh, we look forward to that.
All right.
Go ahead.
And I also want to apologize because I probably can't hear anything you say. My hearing is really shot. But I'll do my best.
Okay.
I am here tonight because I learned very recently that you're putting in a plan for changing the manner in which you pick up trash and recyclables. I have no experience in that field. I don't know that much about it. I've learned a lot in the last 3 or 4 weeks because I've applied myself in that respect. My experience with recycling goes all the way to Los Angeles, where I have a son, Marco, and he's been in a house that has used the same type of apparatus to pick up their trash, their recyclables, and they even go into yard waste. So they have 3 of these big 95-gallon containers. And they are ubiquitous. It seems like they're in the street all the time. They're not, of course. They do arrive at the street long before the truck arrives, the day before in most cases, and they're still there long after the truck has left. They're unsightly. They do nothing but bring down the neighborhood. They are everywhere. Not everybody takes the can and puts it back where you can't see it. In the case of Bristol, I suspect there will be a lot of people who will just leave it in the front of the house, particularly where they're going to have difficulty getting the damn thing to the curb. And that's true in the case of this town more than Los Angeles. Los Angeles, it's simple. You probably were impressed with the fact that Swansea has this system. It's a partial system in their case. I've spent a little time riding through Swansea. They only use recyclables. Their trash goes into green plastic bags. I think they vary in size. Bags, I mean. Mm-hmm. What I'm getting at is, this is a classic town. This is a town with a lot of custom, culture. I bought a book at a used book sale written by a man that I understand lives in this town. And it's called Preserving Bristol. And there's a book that ought to be required reading for anybody that seeks public office in this town. It's an excellent book. The prose is good. The history is exciting. I'm a newcomer in this town. I've only lived here a couple of years, and I don't even live here full time. I go to Florida half the year. But I experienced something I have only experienced once before in my life, and that was a feeling that I belong here. I think there are a lot of people that feel the same way. But I'm not sure that they're going to feel that exact same way once those cans arrive. By the way, I only know what, my sources of information have been limited. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. I understand we have 9,000 residents in this town. I'd like somebody to verify that if that's correct.
I know why you said that. We actually have 9,000 approximate houses. We have about 23,000 residents.
23,000?
23,000, yes.
Whatever the number, you do the math because I'm probably going to screw it up. The thing that caught my eye was this business of how these things never go to bed. They're there all of the time. How can I say it? That's my principal reason for being here tonight. However, I think I have enough knowledge to present a couple of arguments as to why you shouldn't do this. One is financial. I have been impressed for quite some time about how your guys work on those trucks. They come by in a matter of seconds, and they are gone. I concluded from what I was able to see that it occurred to me, how do you motivate people to work like that? And my guess is they work like that because they get finished early and they can go home. You can correct me on that if that's an assumption that isn't correct, but it's rather surprising. So I asked the driver, I talked to one guy, he operates the recyclables truck. He's all by himself. And I said, how many people do you see every day? How many times do you pick up recyclables? And he gave me a figure I couldn't believe. Do you know what it is? Do any of you know how many times that guy picks up recyclables and probably goes home early?
So you asked me to correct you if you were wrong.
I'm sorry.
So you asked to be corrected if you were wrong. So they don't.
I definitely want you to correct me if I'm wrong.
They don't get to go home early if they're done early.
Oh, okay.
So,
I was
although
wrong
that
on
sounds
it.
very,
Well, that's
very
even
nice, and
more
I'm sure they'd also appreciate it. It's that. But what I'd like to do, Mr. Hoffman, is that you brought up a couple of concerns. Let's address some of those. Let's talk about why we went this way in the first place. Director McBride, could you give a nice, quick, why did we get to where we got to? And certainly, Mr.
Can you hear him? Would you relate that to me?
He asked me to answer the question or kind of give you an overview of how we got to where we are relative to the proposed changes in the recycling and trash collection.
I'm not sure I understood that.
He wants me to explain why we came to the conclusion to change the way we do business.
Is that a question?
No, he asked me to relay that to you.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm not sure I understand yet. Can I
So-
come up there?
Come on up.
Good.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Spectacular. Mr. McBride, you're not going to... Kevin, we're gonna go off script here. Come on up.
How about I want to make sure the folks at home can hear.
I agree.
I see you, but I didn't get to think.
That is Director McBride. Director McBride is DPW Director. He's going to explain to you why we got to where we got to right now.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll give you some. I like a couple more things to talk about.
But we're going to do this quickly because we have a lot of other things that we need to accomplish. So, but this is important.
At the end of the night.
This is important. So, Mr. McBride.
Real quickly, the primary motivation to go to the changes in the recycling and trash collection were several reasons, but the primary reason is to go to fully automation, to remove those two individuals on the back of a trash truck from picking up about 15 tons of trash a day per truck, to minimize our impacts on workers' comp issues. Guys getting hurt is basically what it is. And then it was also to increase our production, to do things a little bit more efficiently using modernized equipment. So that was the second motivating factor. And then the other thing was obviously to take a look at how we collect recyclables and maybe do that a little bit more efficiently and maybe a little bit less often if we can get our production rate up with the utilization of new equipment.
Exactly. So we're going to stop right here. Mr. Clerk, we have equipment for hard of hearing, correct? But I know that it's something that we need to put in advance of a meeting, correct?
It is something it is something that we have. It's located in the back of the room.
Okay. Is it possible, Mr. Hoffman, that could we continue this to our next meeting and make sure that you're here, because it's important that you're hearing what we're talking about, right? So.
Look. No, I'm heading to Florida as soon as I can. So
Okay.
I'm not coming back.
Okay. Why don't you go back up to the podium, if you would, sir? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I believe I've submitted.
One of the issues that I suspect you haven't considered at all, and that is the question of liability. The two men on the truck, all of the men on the trucks are covered by workman's compensation. Workman's compensation precludes those men from suing you. It's a trade-off. You know how workman's comp works. You agree that if he gets hurt on the job, you're going to pay him.
We don't want him.
What?
We don't want him to get hurt in the first place.
I understand that.
That's what we're trying to avoid.
What I want to get to is you're going to give each family 2 of these big cans. And the some member of the family is going to move those cans. And I think the cans belong to you. So I think you're going to find yourself reliable in that. Whatever the word is.
We knew what you meant.
Liable, yeah, that's it.
Liable.
And you think how many times, if there's even a very, very small chance that you're going to be sued by some family member moving your can over difficult terrain, because it is difficult in very many parts of this town, multiply that by the number of people. Multiply that by the number of times they move that can, which presumably is going to be 2 times out and 2 times back. And then multiply that by all the years they're going to do that, which will be forever, apparently. I think the business of reliability, that alone is enough to scuttle this plan. I think maybe I've said about all I can say. And I know you're anxious. You're all anxious to go home. So I'm going to go home, too. My appeal to you is that you just reconsider it. As far as those guys on the trucks are concerned, I think they're doing a hell of a job.
Agreed.
And thank you all. I know I've kept you late.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. So it's challenging to be able to respond to concerns, but we certainly would like to, and I know it's hard of hearing right now, but
If you want me back and get to me before I leave, I don't have a date yet, but I'd be happy to talk to you.
Maybe
Thank
Kevin
you.
can
Thank
meet
you.
with him.
yes.
No, because he said he couldn't reach you that time.
Yeah.
Kevin,
Yeah.
Director McBride has made some attempts to reach. Mr. Administrator, did you want to share something? You looked like you wanted to share something before.
No, just in regards to the work crews on the back of our trucks, in which is one of our main motives. We want our employees to be safe. I researched our injuries. In the last 5 years, we had 43 serious injuries that cost us $310,000. 43 injuries, all directly related to picking up trash and recycling. And the director can tell you how many tons a day these people are physically picking up objects.
Right now I have 2 individuals that are out on long term. One recycle operator and the other a trash collector. So that's 2 that have been injured on the job, legitimate injuries. We're collecting about 30 tons of trash a day, so that's 15 tons per truck, so that's 7.5 tons per individual on the back of a trash truck that gets lifted every day. We're collecting anywhere between 8 and 10 tons of recycling a day, 2 trucks, each individual, 4 to 5 tons apiece per day. They make 2,000 plus stops a day to cover all the residents and businesses in the town, and it's 5 days worth. Some guys leave early because they work through breaks and lunch because they prefer to do it that way. If it's a rainy day, they'll do the same thing, and the trash crews and the recycling crews come in soaking wet, and we make accommodations for them in that regard too. Again, it's all about personal, professional safety in regards to these guys who work very hard at what they do, and it is not an easy job by any stretch of the imagination. So, I think us looking into automation is the right thing to do, and the sooner we do it, it is the best thing to do for this community, in my mind.
So, and I think also a very important point here is that this council and the administrator and all town employees we're reasonable. So we're going to look at this, implement the new system, give it X time, and after X time, we're going to review it. If there are improvements necessary, we'll make those improvements, and we'll address the issues, and we'll fix them. So, that's the answer.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion that we receive and file, and also we want to thank Mr. Hoffman for his spirited vim and vigor, and his comments are appreciated.
And his kindness.
His kindness,
yes. Agreed. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Did you want to add something really quick?
I just wanted to add something to this conversation. My name's Rayanna Clemens. I live at 33 Elmwood Drive. And I have at a couple of my properties, not local, I have these types of trash cans. And we all know that, I've got this little issue with my ankle that I had surgery. And these trash cans were my saving grace. Because on trash day, on crutches, I could move that trash can down a hill of a driveway safely. They're very easy to maneuver. It was very easy to wheel in, bring out. Because I got to tell you something, here in Bristol, I couldn't put my trash to the curb. Even with my scooter, I couldn't do it. So I look at it this way, our elders here in town may be overwhelmed by size, but the ease of move is unbelievable when compared to what I was dealing with the 2 recycling bins and trash can alone today. I couldn't even bring them in at the same time. That's one thing. The other thing, too, is the amount of garbage they hold. Well, they hold a significant amount. Not all families will fill them, and, be that as it may, some families will. I got to tell you, my 2 recycling bins are overflowing until the wind blows. Then they're down the street. So you want to talk about liability? I've got a trash can now, 2 recycling bins, along with all my neighbors' trash cans and recycling bins that are all over the street. That's a bigger liability to this town.
Yeah.
Accidents happen on people's property all the time. That's covered by homeowners insurance. Are things going to happen in the street? Not like they happen now, because I got to tell you, when we had a house on Casey Drive here in Bristol, oh my God, it was a field day in the cul-de-sac, which was the top of Lisa Lane, and that itself was problematic. So I think this town is headed in the right direction with automated trash. It's going to cut down on workmen's compensation claims. It's going to keep everybody safer. And that, I've lived it, I've used it. I don't know if everybody here has actually used it, but it's a very easy process, and I think it's going to encourage more people to recycle, which I do believe we're a little behind the times on, and we can get a higher reimbursement, because it's much easier to put all of the recycling material into a big bin versus a little tiny box that got hit by a car or broke the corner, and now you can't get another one because everybody else is broke and they're on back order. So I think this is a win-win for the town, and I think it's going to be a huge cost savings.
Thank you.
So just a few, been there, done that. I just want to give you a heads up, it works.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we had a motion and a second to receive and file. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is item I3, and this is from the Police Department regarding mutual aid agreements for Portsmouth and Warren. You have a draft resolution which would allow for adoption of those mutual aid agreements.
Chief.
Yes, I'd like to thank the clerk for adding this in quick order onto the agenda tonight. And in concert with us achieving national accreditation in RIPAC, it's one of the tenets of the program is to have a resolution done first before you sign a mutual aid agreement. The council did so in 2003. I reached out to the solicitor's office, and they felt best that we put it back on the agenda and get the current council approval to engage in a mutual aid agreement. It's in concert with Rhode Island general law with the bordering community. So it was the solicitor's recommendation that we come back out in front of you folks and get those agreements. I know Warren is looking for it. They're going through the accreditation process, so it will help our sister community next door as well. And it will allow us to meet one of the 12 tenets that we need to get RIPAC certification. On an update with accreditation, our foot is still on the gas pedal. We're making great progress, and there should be good news coming out by the end of the calendar year on both CALIA and RIPAC.
Excellent news, Chief. It's always good to see towns working together, too. So I'll make a motion to adopt this resolution.
And I have a question.
So we have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Chief, how does this differ from what we currently have in place? Is there much of a difference between, because this is not a new document, like you said, in 2003, obviously we had something in place. Was this
to the best
modified?
of my knowledge, it's a mirror document, and we're just putting it again in front of the current council, and that was a recommendation from the solicitor that we have the current council take a review of this process.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is item J1, and this is essentially informational at this point. This is bid 917. It was originally advertised for this meeting, and there is an extension by amendment to the original bid that you will be continuing it until November 20th.
Do you need action on that, Lou?
Well, it wouldn't hurt.
Motion to continue?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is bid 918. This is for drainage improvements to O.P.T. Drive, Alves Street, and Berry Lane. You have 2 bids received. The first is from JML Excavation Incorporated of Bristol in the amount of $64,410, and the second is from Carty Corporation of Warwick, Rhode Island, in the amount of $173,000 even.
Motion to refer to the town administrator to act in the best interest of the town?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Just briefly, there's quite a discrepancy between these two.
Sure is.
So hopefully there's not too many alternates afterwards, Hopefully nothing sneaks in on that one. That's something that I'm sure you'll keep an eye on.
I'm sorry, Mr. Texera, could you...
No, I was saying there's quite a discrepancy between these two, which I'm a little puzzled by it. But what I'm saying is hopefully if we go with the lowest, there's not too many alternates.
Okay.
And I'm sure you'll monitor that.
Thank you.
There's a motion and a second to refer to the administrator. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is from the Solicitor's Office, and it concerns an amendment to the zoning code, Section 28-284.
So this is starting the process for a zoning ordinance amendment in connection with the redevelopment of the industrial park property. This is a request from the receiver to allow more flexibility for that property and future uses. So the requested action of the council is to direct the solicitor's office to draft a zoning ordinance amendment to this effect. Two aspects are requested. The first aspect pertains just to the portion of the property known as Building 3, changing the zoning, the conditions applicable to the property to permit assisted living or age-restricted residential use on that portion of the property. The second has to do with eliminating the current requirement of a certain percentage of the property being used for commercial or industrial uses. The idea would be permit all commercial uses on the remainder of the property to give maximum flexibility for that redevelopment. So directing our office to prepare that zoning ordinance amendment and also referring it to the planning board. We're on track, I think, to have the planning board consider it in November. So it will be, as a zoning ordinance amendment, you will see it again.
Is there a motion on that?
So I'll make a motion to forward to the solicitor to draft the ordinance.
And planning.
And plan.
Thank you.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
Well, I mean, doesn't mean once we see it, we'll have plenty of discussion. I mean, doesn't mean that we approve of this totally, right?
So absolutely, yes. That next step is it comes back in front of us with a recommendation from the planning board, assuming a positive. If not, then we deal with that accordingly. So,
yes.
And then we have that time effort to talk about it. Okay.
Looks like Mosaico's moving in the good direction, though. Good steps forward.
Agreed. So there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And the next item concerns the individual council member. Agenda items beginning with the chairman.
So we had a meeting tonight that started at 6 with interviews, so I'm going to be real quick here. I just want to go back to how we started it. I'm just ecstatic about the bridge. I'm going to say again that the administrator and I spent an inordinate amount of time advocating for this community, for this council, for the people of Bristol, and I'm ecstatic that this is moving forward. Again, I wanted to say thank you to the governor's office, our treasurer, Seth Magaziner, and the DOT director and his staff. Without that without those efforts, without their support, it would not have gotten here, and the people of Bristol deserve this. I'm ecstatic. Thank you.
Mr. Sweeney.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for all your hard work, and the town administrator and the DOT, because this is definitely a positive outcome that we needed it for keep that commuting going, and we need to make sure our small businesses are looked after, and I think this is a nice outcome. I just wanted to congratulate Rockwell School for the second year in a row. Standardized test scores are top in the state. So I just wanted to say keep going. I mean, that's wonderful. And I want to just thank all the teachers, the administration, and the parents for being a model. Also wanted to let everybody know that there is going to be a meeting with the interim superintendent, Dr. Jonathan Bryce, future of education in Bristol Warren Regional School District. That's going to be held on November 5th at 6:30 to 8 at the Mount Hope High School. And the other one is going to be held on November 6th from 6:30 to 8 at KMS. So they're going to be just talking about, how to increase, what does it look like for the future of our schools, and understanding what students are doing now and what they need to be doing and how we need to prepare, maybe taking a look in the building, improvement all around. So we need the community. It's all about community and making good school systems, and so I wanted to make sure that was out there. Other than that, happy Halloween. Hope everybody stays safe. Thank you. Have a good night.
Mr. Texera.
I echo also the thank you to the town administrator and the chairman, for working very hard on behalf of our community and to certainly make things a lot easier and bring some peace, I guess, amongst all of us. The other piece is I had an opportunity to attend a workshop yesterday sponsored by DEM's Facilities Committee regarding the Cold State Park bond. And it was quite interesting to sit in and just to kind of brainstorm what the possibilities will be. Just for our folks that may not know, eventually the facility will no longer be used as the headquarters, for the park. No, will it be used for the maintenance equipment that they currently house there. They're looking for alternative uses. They currently work on a shell of the building, but they actually were trying to solicit suggestions as to how they could best be put to use going forward. And it was very interesting, and it was one of the first meetings. There'll be another public meeting, will be a public meeting. Yesterday was more for invited folks. The next one will be a public meeting where they'll present many of those ideas that were brought forth. Some of them were to retain part of the bond still as a bond, for use of cattle work on in conjunction with Cockshell Farm, and use it for to still house some animals there. That was one of the things that discussion. Museum possibility, farmers market, seasonal business. So there was quite a few things that were brought about, and it was very nice to be part of the discussion. But we'll be hearing a lot more going forward. So, thank you.
Ms. Perella.
Thank you. Well, I'd also like to just thank Steve and Nathan and everyone who has been involved in trying to get DOT to make to move forward and not have that road be closed next summer. So it is a great accomplishment, and I think if it shows that if everybody kind of advocates and works towards the same goal. And it is a lot, as one of you said earlier, a lot of it is just what's behind the scenes. It is, you can have lots of public forums and maybe not make as much progress as you would make just trying to, be a good advocate and point out the difficulties and run through various scenarios and get them to really think out of the box a little bit. So thank you very much, all of you, everyone that worked on that. The others, I had a request. I just want to let people know of a new program at the Rogers Free Library, and it is called Lynda, and that is lynda.com, is now available at the Rogers Free Library. It's a learning platform, is acknowledged as the world's top teaching site for mastering technical skills, creative techniques, business strategies, and many more. Courses are taught by instructors recognized for both their knowledge, knowing their material, and knowing how to teach it. There are also 14,000 video courses also available through lynda.com. And all you have to do is be a card holder at the library and to be able to access this. And some of the courses that are offered are software, Microsoft Office, Excel, PowerPoint, etc., web design, social media, personal development such as self-awareness, time management, public speaking, photography, business, job search, resume writing and design, networking, freelancing, recovering from layoff, technology, engineering such as AutoCAD, 3D design, drafting, and finance, taxes, personal finance, using Quicken, and teaching kids about money. Those are just some samples. So I just want to point out that this is available, and it's paid for by the Friends of the Rogers Free Library. And it's a great opportunity, and it's Lynda, L with a Y, Lynda.com, lynda.com. and you just have to log on with your library cards. If you don't have one, you can just go to their website and I think submit for a card or go down there. Okay, so any questions? Mike, did you get a good picture of that? Linda with a Y? Okay. Linda with a Y, yes. So thank you, and happy Halloween to everyone, and be safe tomorrow evening.
Mr. Lay.
I just want to echo what a lot of my colleagues have already said. When you come here and you get elected for the first time, and one of the first issues they throw at you is a bridge closing, that is something that keeps you up at night. It's something that you think about every day, and it's something that you agonize about because it's so hard to get RIDOT to do things, right? Mm-hmm. But you guys worked behind the scenes. You got it done. We had faith in you the whole time to keep doing it. And, it's just a matter of persistence, I think. And so I'd like to thank both of you so that we can put those agonizing moments behind us, but we have to make sure that the job gets done still, right? So, that's great. That's about all I have. I just had a quick question for the administrator. I'm totally putting you on the spot right here, but I know you're probably flying a little high after this the bridge victory that you got. I noticed that the intersection improvements are starting to come to a close. Where are we at on that? I noticed that they've been putting up the walk signals and everything like that. Are we starting to think about or is the RIDOT starting to think about putting up the traffic signals and everything? Or?
Yeah, they're going up now. The steel work is in. It's at the old Benny's parking lot. So the steel work to hang the new traffic signals are going in now. And once it's complete, the intersections will be controlled by a traffic camera, not just like a signal camera. So won't be using the magnetic loops anymore on the roadway.
Okay.
They'd be controlled by a camera. So it should be much more efficient once it's all up and running. But it's in progress.
Okay, excellent.
They're waiting for the steel, so it's in.
All right, excellent. I just can't wait for that left turn signal over at Anawamsket. That's the thing that drives me the most nuts in this town. All right, that's all I have.
Town Administrator, agenda items.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe the chairman captured the essence of the last year or so with the Silver Creek Bridge, and once we put the safety portion aside, we just couldn't fail. We had a lot riding on it, but we stayed with it. And the main thing, what I learned from it is we couldn't shut the communication down. And I think the success was sticking with it. And I really have to give Director Alviti a lot of credit for his, and I've said the word before, his governance, getting what needs to get done for the safety of everyone, but at the same time keeping an open mind and keeping all the options open. There'll still be lane restrictions. There'll still be a northbound detour. The difference is the road will not be closed. It'll extend the lane detour, but it won't be a closed road at any given time. The Director Alviti did speak about the high-speed ferry. It was successful this year, but wasn't a stellar performance, so we're going to have to really push that for next year if we intend on keeping the high-speed ferry here in Bristol. Our numbers are all good. You heard from Greg Marsili, our harbor master. Visitation's up, food and lodging is up. All of our revenues are doing well year after year, so I'm confident we're on the right track. But I want to thank the chairman. I believe because of his work schedule and his position as chairman, I work closely with him, and I got to say I can't give him it's amazing how much we can accomplish when administration and the council work together. And I want to thank you personally, Chairman. Again, Director Alviti, the governor's office, Rico Voter at the governor's office, and also Seth Magazzino, who really advocated strong more recently. But so I'm thrilled that we're going to keep the road open. And as the chairman said today, of all days, it's weird how messaging works. We had the meeting. I ran late for the meeting today because I was with the superintendent of schools at Gutierrez School. There was an issue with the plumbing there, and the kids had to go home early. So to our original point, safety of the community is paramount. We have 1,000 children in the downtown area, and I'm glad that from here on out, there'll be an escape route on Hope Street if needed. Safety is first, and we've preserved that, and then we just couldn't fail after that. So I'm very happy with where we're at. few other positive things. Police department collected over 100 pounds of unwanted medications and drugs last weekend. And it's interesting how that ties in with our sewer department. They recently had a study done, and they found traces of everything from caffeine to opioids that ultimately end up in the harbor. They can't be treated, and that's through regular waste and also through people just dumping medications and flushing them. So the police department at any time will take unused or unwanted medications at the police department lobby 24/7. So it's important that we don't dump medications, unwanted medications down the drain. Veterans Day is coming up on November 11th. And I'm surprised the chairman didn't say this, because at 8:30 in the morning there's a very simple but meaningful wreath laying at the War Garden here right on the side of Town Hall. It's at 8:30 in the morning on Monday, November 11th. And I will say, if anyone in the community can make it, it's worth 10 or 15 minutes.
It really is.
It's our veterans from Bristol, our Veterans Council, the town council usually shows up, and it's very meaningful, and it's one thing I enjoy going to. Last thing I'd like to say is Happy Halloween to all of our ghosts and goblins, and I think the weather doesn't look that great, but hopefully they all have fun with their friends and family, and they're able to get together for a little while tomorrow night. That's all I have, and have a great night.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. Thank you.